Morgan, if you want to first introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Well, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. Sorry, I was looking everywhere. I'm Morgan Curtis. I am a buyer specialist for Lohser Group. So I work over with Jake Lohser here on the east and west sides. I've been licensed for just about 5 years. I'm on the ALC. This is my second time being on the ALC. Let's see what else is interesting about me. I don't know, I love buyers, so that's why I'm here. And yeah, I just recently bought my own house, actually my second house. So I've been through it a few times and I find that to also be really helpful. So we can talk about that later. And I don't know, anything else interesting I should talk about? No.
From the get-go, again, Morgan is an amazing buyer's agent. So I know right now buyers, I'm sure we all have a ton of questions or are wondering what Morgan does to help these buyers find homes, just because right now there aren't a lot of homes. So if anyone does have any questions on that, any specifics on what Morgan does, feel free to ask it. You can unmute yourself or type in the chat from the get-go, but otherwise Morgan's probably going to just follow along with the Ignite material. And then again, if you have any questions, feel free to interject at any time.
Yeah.
With a hand raise or, whatever. Type in the chat if you want.
Something. All right, so again, we want to focus today of how we're going to cultivate our leads and turn them into buyer opportunities. So the secret to being a successful real estate agent is that there is no secret. Success leaves clues, so we know exactly what successful agents do every day. Every day, agents do 2 types of activities. They grow their business and then they run their business. The goal of our time here is to model what successful agents do every day and show you how to do it, which really is, maybe I can just teach you some tips and tricks while we go through the material about getting our buyers homes and getting them in general. So we're going to focus on lead generating today for buyers, and then also, really kind of talk about the importance of the database and how to really take control and advantage of your sphere of influence, and really just kind of how we can work that to our advantage and really grow our business. So the agenda for today is going to be find the buyer, cultivate the buyer lead, qualify the buyer lead, and then sign a buyer agreement, which those are really important. So before we begin, just some fun facts. I think we all know these pretty well by now, but 89% of buyers have purchased their home through a real estate agent, which is great for us. 41% of buyers have found their agent through a referral from friends or family. 75% of buyers interviewed only one real estate agent during their home search, as well as 51% of buyers visited open house as a way to search for homes. So this is all good news for you, because these are all activities and things that we know, we do open houses, we work our sphere, referrals are our best friends. This is good. And then just with all these statistics in mind, where do you guys think that you want to begin looking for buyers, or where do you look for buyers currently? I guess I'll start with people in the room first.
Referrals.
Referrals.
Open houses.
Open houses. Have you guys been experimenting with different ways of getting leads?
We're working with Eric, and he's doing a program called Sync for lead generation. So
cool.
Yeah, for buyers.
Cool. Anybody on Zoom? Where we're finding our leads right now, or where you're looking to find leads?
Anyone, feel free to unmute or type in the chat. All right. Kelly says referrals and sphere.
Good.
Heidi Huffman says circle prospecting.
That's good.
Ryan says referrals. Sally Price says anyone I talk to.
Same. Cool. All right. So for me, a lot of places that I find my buyers, again, is like what most of you have talked about. It's been referrals. I also do leverage social media a lot too. I find social media to be the best way to touch our sphere, really be in like very soft contact with everybody throughout the year. I know there are different systems, that we know with all the different touch and letters and things like that, but I find social to be one of the most important ones. This way, you know what's going on, who's had a baby, who is just moving to a new area and might be renting, and then you can work on them to get them to buy once they're ready after this new job. just kind of staying in touch and making sure, you know, no need to be berating them with I sell real estate, but you know, the more that they see your name and the more that they remember you, the more that they'll come back. And I found this to be true because people I haven't talked to in so long from my high school have been reaching out, and just because they've seen me post about a couple of my clients here and there on Instagram or Facebook. So that's one of those places that I really in tune with the sphere, where I really try to go hunt for people or really let them hunt me sometimes, which is great.
I think that's really good, is showing everyone that you do sell real estate, but not necessarily always reaching out to them about it.
Mhm.
Because, you know, if you call the same person every 6 months, they're gonna be like, I know why you're calling me.
Right.
Whereas if you just keep posting about it, they keep seeing it. And if you're friends with them on Facebook or something and you comment on their stuff every now and then, they'll be like, oh, that's Morgan, friendly, and then they'll come to you.
Right, exactly. It can sound silly, especially if you're not someone who is super into social media, but that's what's nice about it, is you don't have to work too hard to, you know, you can just be as simple as a like, or a happy birthday, or congratulations on whatever major like milestone, because then when you talk to them next time, you can bring that up. But also, again, they don't feel like you're stalking them every couple of months. But that's in my opinion, that's just how I operate. Okay, so once we've found the buyer, we want to cultivate them. So once we've had a conversation with a potential lead, we need to cultivate and really get them to start thinking about buying. So this is somewhere where you want to just continue conversation and really make sure that you have a plan to chat with them, whether that's your leveraging command, you know, your phone calls, whatever that may be. Just again, once you've got someone kind of on that hook, you want to keep them interested and educated and ready to go, because the more that you talk to them, the more the back of their minds are going to be, once they're ready, they're going to come back and reach out to you. Let's get this. So really next, and what I think is one of the most important things, is really you want to qualify your buyer leads, because you can meet someone in an open house who comes in being like, I love this house, I want to buy it. And then you talk to them a little bit more and then they're like, oh no, I'm just a neighbor down the street. I do like it, but I haven't talked to a lender. I don't have cash to buy it. I don't have cash to put down for a loan. You know, there's no way for them to actually buy it. And I know when I was first getting started, I got too excited because I had people who were interested in working with me. And so what you do is, if you haven't qualified someone to the point of where, you know, they're in specific, and there are categories that we'll get into where they're in specific categories and you want them to be at the top as an A buyer, you don't want to be taking your time out and taking them out and out and out, because that will just run you dry. And then you'll get stressed out, and then, you know, you've done a bunch of work and you're all ready to go, or they get all amped up about a house and then they can't buy it. So definitely want to focus on that as part of just your game plan when you're working with buyers, because it'll save you your time, but also you don't want to waste other people's time, but really we don't want to waste our time, because that way you can work with actual better leads, better buyers, and, you know, get them to those contracts and get them to those keys. So one of the things that there are 3 different levels. So, and this is what I found to be really helpful, I think, when I was taking this class a few years ago, was knowing the A, B, and C leads. I'm not sure, are you guys familiar with A, B, and C leads? Are you on Zoom? Yeah, so the A lead is who you want to work with. So again, they're at the top of the funnel. You know, they're the ready, willing, and able to purchase. So maybe they're pre-approved, or they're really willing to get pre-approved. These are people who want to be moving in the next couple of weeks to a month, month and a half or so. B buyers are people who maybe are pre-approved. They know they want to move, but they're not quite there yet. So a couple of months out. As then you have your C buyers who are just, they would like to buy a house, but nowhere in the near future. They don't really have a need. They just are kind of getting their feet wet and can also end up just being looky-loos. So while you're nurturing these different leads and different kinds of people, is there anything that you guys do in your regular practice as you've been working with buyers that they've come in? Like, what do you do? You know, if you get a C lead, have you found any success of getting them to be a B lead? Or have you seen people go from A to C pretty quickly after a few conversations?
I think getting them pre-approved, pre-qualified for the lending aspect has been something that I've found they're very ambivalent about. And so, you know, obviously you can't push them to do something that they're not comfortable. So I just put them on like, kind of like a slow drip. I check in with them, you know, maybe every 30 to 45 days. I have this one gentleman who says, I'll get pre-approved, it's not, my credit's great. And then, like he was actually out of work during COVID, and I'm like, you have to show proof of income, and he didn't believe me. And then he reached back, oh yeah, you're right, you are right. I'm like, oh yeah.
That's always really satisfying when they come back and be like, oh, I should have listened to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he's working now, but like, again, window shopping. So I just have him on, like I have him on the portal on MLS. And so he gets the emails. I see that he's reading them, and, it's like, I just kind of back off. Like it's gotta be, the right time for him.
For sure.
Because I've had multiple conversations that, obviously going and seeing, I've taken him to a couple of homes, but it's a waste of time because he's not pre-approved. And I told him, it's like shopping without your wallet. So until you're ready to make the next step,
That's a good script.
yeah, you'll keep getting my emails, but
Not gonna go crazy yet. So one of the things she just said was that if she has one buyer who she's in kind of nurturing and working with, and how she's quantified it to him is that we're kind of shopping without our wallet because he's not ready to buy because he doesn't have the means to buy yet. So I'm gonna keep that in mind. That's a really good thing.
someone here in the office said that. I think maybe Amanda Malone.
Yeah. But I mean, that's literally what it is. I mean, I know it's like, it can be a really uncomfortable conversation, and then correct me if it's wrong, when people are like, yeah, I can buy a house, And it's just like, well, here are a few people to talk to, see if they can prove that, and then let me know. And then once they really, I'm like, because there are different options too. If your go-to lenders like Sean and Don, or maybe if there's other people that you work with, they're usually easy to work with, even if they're not pulling credit, to kind of be like, okay, so this is maybe what your Chase Journey score says, or this or that, and this is your income. You can kind of put together some kind of preliminary idea. If you can't really get them to that, then do exactly what Marie's doing, just kind of nurture them. I do like an MLS drip too, just kind of like, hey, like this is what's pending, like see how fast things are going. This is why we can't buy a house, because if we're in a multiple situation, I can't even like write offer because you won't even be, considered.
Yeah.
So what about your A buyers? What are you doing with those kinds of people? Like people are ready to go. Are you guys out and about like crazy right now? Is there any inventory for them right now?
I think personally, I don't have A buyers because I think a lot of people are like the flip side. They're scared to go through because if they've heard from other people, they've like the general consensus is, I don't want to overpay for a house. I'm scared. I kind of want to like wait and see what the market does. And so they don't want to get into a multiple offer situation. So they're just kind of like, I want to pump the brakes. Yeah, they're hanging out.
Yeah. How about you?
Well, I mean, I have other agents I work with that show houses on behalf also. So, and it's just hard finding a house. I mean, I don't know what else to do really than just, how do you, they got to bid the house up, and how do you even get them the house? I mean, the houses are flying off the market. So I've started working a lot more with sellers.
Yeah. So, and those bring buyers for your agents too. So that's good.
That's what, like, I don't know how. I mean, you get the buyer, but how do you get them under contract to find the right house?
Yeah.
To find a house.
Well, it's a lot of like serious conversations. So the question that he was asking, kind of like how, with these A buyers, how are you getting them under contract? I've been very lucky this year. I've really kind of gotten away with getting through a lot of multiple offers. I think my number one secret is just befriend the other agent, regardless if you've had a bad experience with them before, if you don't know them, if they're in our office and they're in another office. It does not matter. The more that you, again, can put yourself in front of the other agent and just, show how lovely you are to work with, how you're going to make it easy, even if it gets a little hairy, you really want to, it's kind of like an interview, because a lot of times agents will take that feedback to their seller and be like, look, I want an offer where I wasn't the highest and I beat out cash. And it was because the agent told me, he was like, you just really seem to know what you're doing. And I really, like, the seller and I both really appreciate how you handle this. And we were able to get it done and come to terms. And whereas I know other people, it's just kind of like, they kind of get turned off. So if you're a kind of person that just sends an offer in, like through Dotloop, like I just had a listing that had 23 offers on it, which was really interesting to be on the back end of this and seeing how some people just hit send through Dotloop. And I was like, who are you? When did you show this house? Like, I don't know who you are. So that relationship it's just as important as the buyer, and it works in the buyer's advantage. So that's one of the things that I've been really trying to do, and I've kind of always done. And I don't know, I mean, with these even with the B buyers who are like wanting to become A buyers, you just have to have like really good conversations of like, it's a little crazy out here. Show them the comps of things that have all sold $20,000 over if you're working in Lakewood. And you just need to get really real, regardless if they're a first time home buyer, if they're a move up buyer, of like, how can we get creative to really stand out?
Hey, Morgan, I have a question. If you have a buyer who has a specific budget, like let's say they want to stay like 150 to 200.
Yeah.
You know, kind of what I've seen out there is, you know, one of the strategies is to show them houses for less, right? So that they have some wiggle room. However, I feel like there is a really big significance in quality of house if you now then change your search to 100 to, you know, 150. Like, it just doesn't seem like, you know, obviously it doesn't equate. Like I'm working on this with my mom actually right now, and it's like there's almost like no comparison. So have you had that like situation, and if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah, so it's really hard because I mean, that's literally, because I'm always telling people like, okay, well, we can kind of look a little bit lower, and then in certain neighborhoods, that lower price point just doesn't exist. Or it starts putting us in different neighborhoods that maybe we weren't really considering, and that's kind of like a B or C neighborhood to them. Like if they want to be in Lakewood, but now we're working in Cam's Corners or maybe Ohio City when they really want to be in Lakewood, it's kind of like, I don't want to do this to you because I know this is where you want to be. So it just depends on the buyer and their comfort level of maybe letting go of a certain neighborhood, which is never really my goal, but sometimes, and actually really every time that we've done this, when we've kind of pivoted of where we're looking to get into maybe an area like Cleveland Heights, where you can find a really great home. If you've got a budget up to 250, you can find a really good home for like 185, 200, 220, you know, and then that way you do have that wiggle room. And so sometimes people are kind of surprised, but also it kind of gets people excited because sometimes they can buy a lower priced house, but maybe it's maybe it has more like 85, 90% of what they're looking for. And then that extra 10, 15% they get to do make a value add for themselves, for future selling and stuff like that. So I kind of try to work that into it being like, okay, maybe these bathrooms aren't redone, but they're not big bathrooms. You can redo them over time, or this is really a paint and refinish floors situation, you know, kind of like that, kind of just be like, how can we get this to be what we want without being like, oh my God, this house is this big when I want it to be this big. It's tough. It just depends on the neighborhood. It's tough.
Yeah.
And it's also tough too, is then, because once you start looking in that price point, I found too, if someone's a $200,000 buyer, we're looking in the 160s, they're kind of like, well, if we go up, we're going to be paying too much. And I'm like, no, this is how we get to what this house is actually valued at. So that's also a hard conversation. I think it's just kind of the more information you can give people to be like, if this is where we want to be, this is kind of how we have to do it. It works. It just is lots of conversations. Just how we do our job, right? It's all relationships. Is there anything from the chat box?
And you sell most on the west side, right?
Usually I'm pretty 50-50, and since I moved back to Shaker from the west side, I have been west side only for the most part, where the west side, I don't know how many of you work on the west side, but it is a crazy, crazy, crazy market. If you're not in there in the first 30 minutes and going over by a lot, you can't, there's no chance.
That's what makes what you do so amazing, because, I mean, like you said, the west side market is on a whole different
It's scary.
plane than the east side market.
Yeah.
And you're winning buyers over there. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it really goes back to like trust, and you really need the agent and the seller to trust you. I know in the past, letters have been amazing for me. I know there's kind of, there's new laws. It's kind of getting a little murky about how to go about doing those. So being able to have a conversation and really show off kind of your skill, if you don't do a letter, which I'm trying to learn not to do, to be honest, we got to make it as, as clean as possible. That's the other thing. You need to have clean offers. Try not to ask for closing costs. Try to get creative with how to get there. Before, like a year and a half ago, if I needed closing costs, I'd be like, oh, let's just add $5,000 on top of whatever we're offering because it'll be fine. It'll balance out. And right now, if you put closing costs on there without any kind of really good, like huge buffer, it's just, it's kind of stuck, and you don't really get looked at because you're not in that top percent. So yeah, I don't know, just getting really creative. Just trying to think. We've been doing informational only inspections. I've had a lot of people come to the table, like, well, they haven't needed to, but come with their offer with an appraisal gap. So saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if it doesn't appraise at 280 where our purchase price is, we'll bring up to $10,000 over the appraised price, or we'll somehow make it work. It doesn't, whatever it may be. If that means we're gonna go to parents or family members who are really nice and get a gift that we can pay them back later, sure, like whatever we can do. And it's just kind of like that reassurance again to the seller of like, we're really in it to win it. I think I just overly stress to these agents, like whatever it takes within reason.
So for informational purpose only, if there's a serious issue.
Oh, we can walk. So so like that paragraph with all the clauses for the ROC, I make sure to leave. I only really cross out the one that mentions repairs and asking the seller to do repairs. But I leave it to be able to, either send a clean ROC within a few days or the third option of walking away and getting your earnings back. And I've only needed to exercise that once.
So that's on the purchase, like, under the inspections in the purchase agreement, you
Yeah,
line that out then?
but I can send you an example.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I learned that from my colleague from one of her classes. And it's helped, it's really helped,
You think Debbie mentioned that, Debbie?
probably.
Cars.
Yeah, that I've done a couple times. I've done 2 rounds of earnest money, just kind of like, hey, once we cross off this inspection, regardless of how we're going about it, we'll give, we'll put another $2,000 or
Payment
$1,500. Right, a payment plan for your closing costs. But yeah, high earnest money, like it's all, it's not just, and regardless of where your buyers, because I'm getting so off topic, but it's not so much with just like, okay, here, the purchase price or the offer, or the house is 260, we're gonna come in at 280, maybe someone's at 290, someone's at, 270, whatever it may be. It's not always about price to these sellers. It's really about all the little things. So if you really comb through the contract, and again, being in conversation with that other agent, like what dates are important. Right now, even though buyers have choice companies, sometimes these sellers, that's very important to them, or they're in their own purchase and need to use the same title company. I mean, really kind of every small little detail, the less that they can come back and counter with or want to have to strike out and change, the better is what I found.
So what's the advantage of having the earnest money given twice after the inspection versus just giving all at once? Like
I think it's like a mental game of like, oh, like they're already willing to give us, 1% here on the at the beginning of the contract, and now they're willing to put even a little bit more in. I find it to be more mental, just because like, look, we're giving up even more out of our debit right now to get this, in earnest.
But even after the offers are accepted, so if you think if they're gonna give, say, $3,000 for earnest money, right? Wouldn't it make it a stronger offer if you just put it on the contract initially, the $3,000 opposed to $1,500, then $1,500 after the inspection?
Yes and no. I don't know. I kind of played around with it, and then sometimes I think people are just like, oh, like they're willing to come back, because most people don't do that.
Right. It's
kind of like, why would you do that? It's like still the same money, but it's just kind of like, we're going to do this twice. I don't know. That was something else Colleen taught me. I try to do a lot of like mental things of like what really can make our offer look different. I don't know. Adding that seems to work. Okay. Anyway, any other questions? Was there anything in the Zoom box? Anything, guys, on Zoom? Anything I can answer, I guess, about qualifying or winning in multiples, at least right now? So another thing to do too for qualifying, and just, from your initial conversation, I know there are some lead sheets, I think, in Command and stuff like that. I personally don't have a little sheet that I fill out, but I know a lot of other agents do, kind of being like, who you are, where do you, find out as much information as possible. That's really helpful too, because even in, just like for a listing, when you're qualifying them on the phone, you want to do the same thing for a buyer. You don't want to be going and running and doing this when you're at the house or at the condo, being like, oh my God, here's a consumer guide, here's all this, and then you find out, oh, like they're just looking for fun because they want to move maybe in like two years. So that's something else, just to go back to the qualifying, to get to these A, B, and C things that will fill in, having a system of knowing what to ask, making sure you're asking it up front, or at least in the initial couple conversations, again, will then go back to making your life easier, because then you're not sprinting out of the house to go meet someone somewhere that everyone's going to be upset about it. Brett, do you have a sheet? Do you use a sheet to qualify people?
Not really.
No. I don't know. Let's see. Gary, anything else you can think of? Do you guys use buyer agreements? Do you guys use buyer agreements? Or does your team
I
use buyer
haven't,
agreements?
I wouldn't quite understand fully how that works.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, I look at it as a kind of like how we have a listing agreement. To me, it's the same thing. It's like, look, you know, it's binding. I go about the fact of like, if we somehow, you know, if you don't decide to buy, for some reason you decide that you hate me, and this usually gets people to laugh because I'm hard to hate. But, you know, if you decide you hate me, you don't want to work together, you know, I will rip this up. But right now, you know, for me to be able to do my job to the best of my ability, I need us to work as a team. So please sign off on this. And then also I kind of throw it in with the consumer guide, being like, hey, like, here's the consumer guide. This is not a scary document. It's literally an informational guide only, which people don't seem to understand. They always think it's something scary. It's not. It's from the state of Ohio. So I usually do that one first. And then I say, you know, I would love, you know, for you to sign this now, work with me. If you want to think about it, that's fine. But it's something, again, back to like the mental game of, you know, if they sign something, then they're like, oh yeah, like I'm committed to Morgan. Morgan's clearly gonna be committed to me. And it's really kind of making it a team, or even I like make my clients my family. So just being like, this is a whole group effort. And that usually works because then you don't really have that fear of like, oh, well, maybe they're on Zillow clicking and talking to all these other agents, or they're going to open houses. It's kind of like programs them to be like, yeah, if I'm like, hey, Ryan, go to this open house. Like, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a mentor and this is in Lakewood. Like, go, just let them know. And then everyone's like, kind of like, I have an agent, it's all good. And you can kind of really build that trust from the beginning. And again, every once in a while, someone kind of gives up or they just are over it, or for some reason, you know, I just respectfully just like, that's fine. You're not committed to me forever, but at least for right now, while we're going through this, which is 98% of the time, people don't usually stop once they started buying. So it's important. We have one. I don't have a special one. I have the one that's in .lib or DocuSign. So it's kind of awkward. I know it took me a few tries to, you know, rumble through and tumble through using it, but I found it to be really valuable, especially kind of with the colder, not so much with like the warmer referrals or leads that we get, but through kind of a more like a open house lead. If you're really trying to convert, I know a lot of people on this call and here do open houses. That's really good for once you really can convert them, the next time that you see them to be like, okay, like don't go to open houses without saying my name anymore. So
I think that there's a lot of just general ignorance when it comes to how you navigate the real estate industry as a consumer. Because I was on opportunity time, a guy called, he really wanted to see this property. And it's like, okay, so I'm like, okay, well, like they're hot. So like they're, you know, like strike while the iron's hot, right? Like you don't want to be like, well, let's just make an appointment and,
right,
you know, talk. So I gave him you know, the courtesy of meeting him. And then after talking to him, like our conversation was awkward. And he was, it wasn't a
run.
creepy.
If he's creepy or they're creepy, she's
No,
run.
it wasn't like a safety issue. It was more of a, you know, then he tells me like his house, like way out there, like west side, but like way out, is like sold fast. I'm like, so you have an agent? He's like, well, kind of. And I was like, wait,
what?
Like, and it was just very, very odd, our conversation. I think they just didn't know. I mean, like I looked him up and he was legit, like his house did sell. So I did fact check him.
Yeah.
But it was.
That's good. Do fact checking.
Yeah. And, but I think that there's just a lot of like overall ignorance and honestly, like maybe that agent did or did not do their part in kind of explaining like, I can help you, you know, or maybe it was just him. But I think that like, if you can say like, hey, I have this agreement, it just firms up our partnership.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I just try to be really casual about it.
Yeah.
And again, be like, it's not scary. I just want to know that you're going to work with me because I work my butt off for the people that I work with. I don't really want to do that. I don't say this, but like mentally, like I don't want to do that if they're not invested in me, because then that's just a waste of my time. And then I'm just going to get upset when I find out that they bought it with someone else or they just are going to go back to renting.
There was a time, it was in the news, where a realtor sold a house, was working with Taylor Swift, and
Love her.
and she bought a house with another realtor, and the first realtor took her to court for a commission.
Oh, is it an agreement?
And the judge threw it out because the realtor did not have a buyer representation.
Interesting. And I know it's very different. I don't know if anyone on here practices in different states. I know it's very different across the board. Like I know someone in Atlanta, and it's like if you don't, like I don't think you can work with an agent without having it signed or once. It's very confusing. So I mean, I look at ours, I'm like, I'm just not the kind of person that's gonna be like, I'm gonna take you to court if you sign this piece of paper. That's just me. You know, people are gonna do what they want to do, but I've really only lost maybe a handful of buyers over the years and it's mostly been, they get burnt out, or maybe we were under contract and it just went so sour that they're just kind of like, I need a fresh start, or they just ghost me, which is rude, but happens. So yeah, there's power in it. And I think it shows them too, it's like, oh, like she kind of knows her stuff, like, okay. And there's also a lot of people too who are just expecting to sign something like with any other industry. So yeah, just get a feel. It's also something too, I kind of plant in their minds during the first conversation of like, okay, like if I haven't met you in person yet, and if I am meeting you, you know, if I am meeting you at a condo or something like that, if that's truly the best way over after, I'm like, okay, you are ready to go. You've sent me a pre-approval. If that's the best way and fastest way, or send it through Dotloop or DocuSign, you know, you just kind of want to get in front of them and just make it like, oh, this is completely normal. Like, don't get exasperated over it, because if you get nervous, they're going to get nervous. So it's something I've learned. Anything else in here? Carrie? I think it's really. I mean, anything, I don't know, I mean, I kind of want to make this more like Q&A style, because I feel like that's how I teach better.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one of the questions I had, like, since you are mostly buyers,
Yeah.
like, how do you juggle all of your buyers? Because I've had a handful of buyers, handful of sellers. I feel like I like the sellers a little bit better. It's a little bit more, it's like time-wise, right?
Yeah.
For my calendar, it's a little bit easier to manage, whereas yes, you want to be available for your buyers and strike while the iron's hot, but how do you also, you know, put that firm boundary up, and because you have other clients?
Well, so this is something I'm working on, if I can be honest, is my time management, because again, I latch onto my clients being like, you know, my value proposition is I am available. I'm here to help you. I'm not someone who only works from 8 to 5, 9 to 7. I know there are a lot of realtors who have success in doing that, and that's awesome. I don't think I can ever get there, because I feel like a lot of times I'm going on evening showings, and, you know, I build my schedule around my clients. So I kind of I try to figure it out. And especially if, say I'm all like, you know, if I have 3 buyers who are in Lakewood, or like, you know, all on the west side, I try to really like navigate and be like, okay, let's all go to the west side together. So that way I'm over there and I'm in certain pockets of town. Boundaries I think are important, but sometimes, I mean, I think in this market, I think you all can agree, like you can't, you know, I don't think I'm the only one writing offers at like 9 or 10 p.m., especially when there's like 12 p.m., you know, 12 a.m. deadlines, or they're due in the morning and I know everyone's gonna be working or sleeping still, and I'm like, let's go. So I think it just depends. I mean, I think again, I try to really, if you go back to, you know, the A, B, and C buyers, I try to give those A buyers most of my attention, but you still want to be talking to those B buyers, and the C, they can be on a drip. They can be on a total, you know, they'll circle back when they're ready, and so obviously will you, but you know, you want to, I just like to maintain contact. But it's, I don't know, it's kind of hard, but especially right now, it's like, just like, well, if I'm in the car, I'm going.
Right. Do you ever show, like, if you have, you know, 2 sets of buyers and they're interested in the same properties, or you think they might, do you ever show them together?
No,
For the same
no,
time?
I know. I try to like at least stagger it. If I like have a 5 p.m. showing with one of them, maybe I'll come back at like 5:45 or 6. I don't really, I luckily have not been in a situation where 2 people have written on the same house. There was one time in Lakewood, Lindsay Podozak had a listing, and I showed it 3 different, I felt like I was listing agent by the time I don't think. So I showed it like 3 different times, and I was really afraid. I was like, oh my God, like, what if I have to write 3 offers on this? Like, what do I do? Well, luckily none of them liked it, which was fine. Lindsay got a really good offer on it. It was not for me. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I don't really, I try to act very neutral. And then if someone is expressing interest, and this is how it's been really lucky, is one person will like it and the other person won't. So I haven't gotten to the point of like, hey, I'm renting on, you know, I'm writing for both of this. But I do have clients who do know that I'm kind of bouncing around Lakewood in the same price point. At least right now it's an example, but it hasn't really come up and been an issue. But I would never be like, let's have Morgan Curtis's own open house during this,
Yeah.
30-minute, 15-minute window of
Sure.
showing. Yeah.
For the three buyers, did any of them know that you were still showing, you were showing a house to other?
I did tell them as I got to the house, being like, okay, this is the second time I've been here, which was good because I already actually knew the house, and they were like, oh, cool, she knows more about it than I would usually think. So yeah, everyone was kind of more relaxed about it just because no one got to the point of like, we all want to write on this house. So that's just kind of like territory that I haven't needed to navigate yet, but also being on a team, it's really nice because then I can reach out to Jake and be like, you can take care of this, and then explain, being like, no, I went to this house first with these people, whatever it may be, or if they're comfortable, I know we have a document where it's what contemptuous offers, maybe is that what it's called? Where if they're okay with you writing 2 different offers, then fine, but I don't know, that's probably not my team too. Or, if you're a single agent, find another agent and be like, hey, if I can figure this out, can you help me? Yeah. It's really fun to show people the same house.
What is something like value added that you do exclusively for your buyers? Like once they like, do you like closing gifts, and how do you follow up? Do you do like, neighborhood nurture? Like what is your follow up afterwards to get referrals?
I really just like to stay in touch with them. Again, kind of back to social media. I find that to be the easiest and just not aggressive way, but I like to check in on them. I love doing a closing gift. So I put together a little like closing basket, usually of cleaning supplies, which was really difficult to do last year when there were no cleaning supplies. And then I was like, you are really lucky that I found these and that you're getting them. But no, so I try to do something nice, up front, like a nicer basket, something like that, kind of just like little things. And then we do send a Cutco knife later, a couple weeks later, so kind of as an additional touch. And then yeah, I don't know, check in and just kind of chat, but I don't like to be in people's faces, especially like I have clients who were neighbors of mine when I lived on the west side, and we went through just chaos trying to buy them a house. And then when we got our house in Rocky River, it was just a really rocky deal from beginning to end. And so when I brought champagne over when we were celebrating, we all just kind of were like, we need a break, but I'm also really good friends with them, so it was okay. So sometimes I also like to give people space, especially when you're out there showing 15 houses and you're putting in 6 offers. Sometimes it's good to be like, let's celebrate right now and let you have a breather, just because we've kind of been like very much connected for a very long time. So I don't know, I like to give people space, but then holidays, birthdays, we have our own team systems. It's kind of like regular follow-up, but yeah, I try to celebrate them as much as I can in the first couple of weeks, and then I'm like, okay, get settled.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you soon.
Got it.
Yeah, but closing gifts go a long way because they usually don't expect something. Like I had someone who was driving in, I helped them buy a house over FaceTime. And so when they got to Cleveland from Florida, I had like put a bottle of champagne in the fridge. I left in the basket with like a little note, and they were just like blown away. So it's really like every like little thing you can do adds up. Like sometimes I'll ask if like, obviously I go get a coffee every morning, sometimes in the afternoons too. So I know if I'm going to Starbucks, I'll ask people if they want coffees, just like stuff like that. I'd be like, can I just bring anything, whatever it may be. They usually are like, wow, thank you, I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I don't know. I really just like to befriend my clients too.
Yeah.
Regardless of where they come from, if they were a random sign call or if someone I went to high school with years ago.
Especially if you give them something that like has your name on it, or it's just like something they'll use every day, or like the
Do you
knife.
use your knife every day?
Yeah, I use it and it has your phone number on it. So I like think of it.
Yeah.
Or even if it doesn't have your name on it, but it's something they're gonna grab for and use every day, I mean, they'll associate it with you.
Yeah.
Give it to them.
Because they'll be like, oh, this came with my house. Who helped me buy my house? Morgan helped me buy my house. Or Art helped me buy a house.
Yeah.
I give a clock and I have my name engraved, phone number on it.
That's cool.
Yeah, and those are 3 things to remember. And then, when you have the engraved on it, there's a tax deduction for that too.
Right,
Like you
right.
engrave your name and.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a bonus to do it closing gifts. You do them right. I don't know. What have you guys, so you do that. Do you do anything in particular?
I show up, I make sure I'm there to give them the key at the
Oh,
end.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless there is some like emergency, like I feel so bad. One of my really good childhood friends closed on a house yesterday, and I'm going to Florida this weekend, and I'm like so distraught that I can't give her the keys. And even though it's like a 5-minute thing, I'm like, woohoo, keys! Like, I'm very distraught. But that's something I definitely always make sure to do. I'm not someone who's like, okay, go get the lockbox and I'll pop by later.
Yeah.
Like, no, I will see you at
Like, I need
6:01.
to be
During the
Dude.
snowstorm to give my
I literally risked my life to give Carrie her keys.
You gotta get
And
Oh, yeah.
a lot of them have their stuff with them, so I'm like, let me help you, and we
Yeah.
talk it out and help
Yeah.
bring stuff in the house.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just,
Or we like start planning things. Like I get really, this is, I think also maybe one of my value adds. My mom was an interior designer, so I feel like sometimes I channel what I grew up like seeing her do and stuff like that. So like when I'm in a house, especially with first time home buyers or people who are coming from apartment living in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, they're buying a townhouse and they're like, wow, solid concept. How do I do this? I'm like, well, I've actually lived this. So I try to just make showings fun. So you make showings fun, even if we are like, okay, we have 15 minutes, we've got to run around as fast as possible. And yeah, this is a huge investment, but it's okay. Like we got this, just try to make it fun. Because if you're stressed out, they're gonna get stressed out. And that's also the other thing too. I like to tell buyers, regardless if they're A, B, or C buyers, when I'm talking to them, I'm like, look, I want to make this ideally as smooth as possible. If anything hairy comes up, like I want to be the one who's stressed out for you. So that way no one's really calm during their transaction, but that way you can be calm and just kind of enjoy it and make sure we're going through our loan process and getting everything done that we need to. And then, our team kind of handles the background.
Do you have any other agents working with you showing houses too, or is it all you?
Things I'm also working on. I luckily have a good group of people who I can kind of reach out to when I'm in a pinch, but I really enjoy my job and being a buyer's agent. Like that's why I'm still doing more. I do take listings every once in a while. It does happen, but I just like it too much. I don't know. I like the thrill of the hunt, but I am very much learning. I cannot clone myself. I cannot be in 3 places at one time. So that's on my 2021 goal, the nearest goal is to get someone to kind of be backup. But yeah, that's it's been very stressful running around, but I don't know. Again, I enjoy it. And I feel like the more I'm going on my own showings, again, I like to be that person. Like, look, I'm with you from the beginning to the end. Though very soon it'll be someone else might be there in the middle, but yeah, I don't know. I think just showing up and being there, and I might be over responsive to people, but I find that people like that because usually when we get to the end of the transaction, they're like, thank you for being responsive. Or I'll tell them straight up, like, I don't know this answer yet. I'll get back to you, even if I'm going to bed and then I answer them.
No, when you mentioned during the transaction, when they're under contract, they're still communicating with you.
Yeah, Erica, our transaction coordinator, does a lot of the contract to close, but I still check in with them.
Like phone calls.
Yeah, I more so text basis with them.
If they have a question about the transaction.
Yeah, they go back between calling Erica or myself.
Okay.
Usually Erica, but a lot of times, if she's on another call or, there are people who like to text, I'm just like, text me. And then if I don't know, I'll just say that Erica will reach out to them.
And then you let them know upfront that Erica will be the contact person. So how does Erica work with them, like for inspections, or how does that work? For what reason would they call Erica opposed to calling you?
Yeah, so it's more of like when we get paperwork from title, or if there's lender questions about paperwork that, maybe they can't get a hold of the lender. When it comes to utilities, just kind of, I always just tell them like, look, 9 to 5, she's your best resource. She'll probably be faster than I am. For things like inspections, I have a really good relationship with my inspector, and I'm usually already talking to him when I'm writing these offers. That way I can kind of be like, okay, list agent, I already have a tentative inspection date. So that I kind of do on my own. Yeah, it just depends. It also depends on the client. Some people are cool talking to Erica, but then also some people are like, well, we only know you, and we're thankful for Erica, but we don't understand. So like, you've been the one showing us, so it just kind of balances out.
So like for your childhood friends and the people who know you, it frees up your time for them to talk to Erica.
Yeah.
Are they comfortable talking to Erica, or do they just call her?
No, they're all comfortable because they're usually like, oh, she's so helpful. I'm like, right, call her.
Okay.
So yeah, and it depends. And also the closer I am with people, I feel like people are like, this is her job. Like the case with the girl who's closing today, she was like, I'm so sorry to be taking up your time. Like, I already called Erica about it. And I was like, okay, I'll just call, check in, say hi. So again, it's kind of like education. And from the beginning too, like I have a folder that has our faces on it and kind of like a little transaction timeline. I'm like, okay, see this little square right here? This is Erica. We will be using Erica once we get to a contract, and she'll be your go-to
Well, you
resource.
said a flow chart, what did you say about that?
We have a folder, so it has like a transaction timeline, which is kind of like a list of like, you're going on showings, you're getting pre-approved, and then, hey, you're under contract, so this is what happens next, like all the steps and dates and stuff like that.
Okay.
That I give to people when I meet them, like with the consumer guide, and I always like to print out. That's the other thing I like when I'm meeting people, I like to give them a folder, usually of all the contract documents, just to be like, I'm a visual person, so I think this will help you, because by the time that, I want you to look at this and kind of, you don't need to be familiar with it, but this way you can be like, oh, okay, I have this on paper somewhere, so that way when it is 10 o'clock and we're trying to write an offer, it's not like brand new information. So just to speed things along. And I think people like being like, okay, they can go back and look at something. Like a little home buyer packet of like what you can expect. I don't know, little things. It's really like little touches go a long way.
How, as the buyer's agent, what are some of the things that like if you've experienced dealing with a difficult listing agent that maybe is not responsive, or like, for example, I took my client to see a condo and I messaged her and I said, hey, my client's very interested. We're thinking about doing a second showing. Have you received offers? Any offers yet? ? One word answer, sold.
Oh, that's always so nice to hear.
And it's like in the MLS, still very much active. And I understand that they do have that grace period to flip it. But I'm like, like how can you assume based on a one word answer, like what that means? And it's like, that really wasn't relevant. Like, her response, you know what I mean? And
yeah, I always just go back and ask questions. I mean, I feel like sometimes I can be a little annoying, but I just want information, because the more information I can get out of someone, even if it still ends up being one word answers, and I can at least be like, well, this is what I do know, and this is, I can't know what it's sold for, or how it's sold for, or whatever, like that's confidential, which clients like get annoyed by, but once they've started getting into it, they kind of understand.
Right.
But I kind of just be like, I've asked, hopefully I'll, if it's someone who says it's sold and then that's all I hear from them, well, at least I know what's going on. Is kind of how I focus on it, being like, at least we know. And at least also too, if we knew that we were gonna go back for a second showing, I always try to spin it back of, well, now we know what we really like and we can target that.
Right.
And just be a little bit faster. But also sometimes too, like I really leverage the Showing Time app, like how you can like chat with agents. Because I noticed they respond to that sometimes faster than they respond, even though it's still going to their cell phone. I find that people respond to that because it's like an alert. And so they're like, oh, so sometimes I use that too, being like, what's going on? Can I still show this? There was one time, again, I was in Lakewood, I was the last showing and the offers were due in 30 minutes. And I called the agent being like, is it worth it for me to put an offer in at this? We didn't get it, but I knew I was kind of up there, but yeah, just, I don't know. I kind of like to poke and prod a little bit. I don't know, it works. Yeah, okay. Wait, no, you guys have to do calls and things. Have I gone through everything, Carrie?
Does anyone in the Zoom room have any questions for Morgan? If so, you can unmute or put them in the chat. I know she gave a lot of great information today, so if anyone has any questions on that right now, feel free to ask, or you can always give
Call,
Morgan
text, email,
call, text.
Facebook.
Morgan,
Yeah.
what's your phone number?
216-978-4271. Yeah, seriously, I mean, feel free to call me as a resource. I know I have a couple of agents who I'm really good friends, like Jeff Longo and I will talk to each other all the time about like, okay, how can we get creative, for one of our clients or something like that. So I'm here to help. I'm pretty accessible unless I'm sleeping or on a showing, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, with the buyer, it's just kind of like you got the really going back to the whole winning the buyer and really getting them. You want to win them. Just be yourself. Ask really good questions because that will benefit everybody, and just really stay in touch, and also really just, make sure everyone's on the same page of like, we can't start doing this until you do, you get a pre-approval. Or what's really fun is getting proof of funds out of people. If they're like, oh yeah, I'm a cash buyer, that to me is the red alert. And I'm like, okay, are you a cash buyer, or are you just saying that because you're going to think I'm going to fall for it and take you to look at a $500,000 condo downtown? I'm not going to fall for it. So
Right.
I have, but I've gotten better. But that's really one of the things, especially is that when I was a newer agent a couple years ago, was that you get so excited when you're like, oh my God, like if you're on Opportunity Time or you get a lead from a listing through Zillow or a sign call or, through Facebook ad, through, command, it's really exciting and you're just like ready to go. But it's really, I think, how I've been able to sharpen my skills is really to like take a deep breath and step back and be like, is this person real? And how real are they? And then how are they really ready for me to, jump in and work with them? Also, just a side note, if you ever do get a weird, creepy feeling like you were not obligated to work with them, because safety is also really important, I think, especially as a buyer's agent, because like weird things that can happen, but it's one of those things, just goes back to the questions. I don't know, be nosy.
All right, we got a question from Heidi Huffman that says, can you do a role play when you get a warm lead that calls you and how you qualify and convert them?
Oh, sure. Carrie, do you want to be?
Is a warm lead someone who's like, I think I want to buy a house now?
Yeah.
Or like,
Or like, oh, I saw your listing.
okay.
I don't know. I hate role plays so much.
I don't know what to
Are
say
you
either.
interested in this house? Hi, Carrie. Is this Carrie?
Hi, yeah, Morgan. I got your number from one of my friends. She said that you helped her buy a house, and I think I might be interested.
Great. That's so exciting. Well, thank you for reaching out. I'm definitely gonna have to thank your friend. Where do you think you want to live? What's your timeline? Have you already started the process?
I don't really know anything about the process, and I'm not totally sure what buying a house really entails. My friend gave me a little bit of details, but I'm sure she's not, an expert on it or anything. But I was just kind of wanting some questions about the process. I think I would be looking in Westlake, but I'm not totally sure yet. I'm moving for a job, or I would be moving for a job.
Sure. When does your job start?
Oh, I already work there. It's just a lot closer to live there than where I live now. I live in Pepperquag. But I was just wondering a little bit about the buying process. I'm not totally sure if it's something I'm ready for, but I think I am.
For sure. Well, this is definitely the first step. So congrats. I always like to congratulate people for getting this far. First step is really talking to an agent, which you've got, so you don't need to worry about talking to anybody else. Really, ideally, we can hop on a Zoom or maybe set up a time to meet, safely somewhere. But really, it all starts kind of with this conversation. Have you, okay, great that you know where you want to live. So Westlake or somewhere near Westlake, it's a little bit of a competitive market. So something we could talk about later, but just so you know, it's a very desirable, popular area to live right now. Have you talked to a lender? Do you think you're going to be getting a loan? Do you think you're going to pay cash for a house? Have you thought that far?
I will be getting a loan. I haven't talked to a loan officer yet. I don't really know much about the process at all, so I haven't really done anything, so I was calling you.
Sure, that's fine. I would just like to ask because some people have, maybe you clicked on Quicken or you've gone somewhere, so that's fine. That's good. They just want your info. So I can definitely send you some of my lender recommendations because that will also be the second place to start. We really want to figure out, what our budget is, and then we can kind of work backwards from that. So if we're looking, for something that's maybe the 200 range, I want to make sure I don't want to dangle any carrots. That's not an agent. That's not how I operate as an agent. I want to make sure that we're going to look at stuff that's in our budget, that fits what you want. So really speaking, other than Westlake and being closer to work, what are you looking for? Like bedrooms, bathrooms? Anything you might think that I might think is weird? This is an important question. Like woodwork, like you were looking at like woodwork, do you need air conditioning? What's really important to you that you have right now that you still need to have, or that you need because you've realized over the last year you don't have the space?
Right now I think I would need 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms maybe, and I'd like a house with a fenced-in backyard. I don't really want to be in like a homeowners association, or if I do, at least it's one where I can fence in the backyard. That's about all I think I know for now.
Yeah. Or anything like fun stuff like our fireplace is important. Do you need it to be updated? Like, do you want to go through and I know a lot of people are seeing HGTV and being like, I can do that, but
unless it's like very little stuff, I would like it to already be updated.
Yeah, for sure.
Or stuff I can just buy, like appliances.
Yeah, that's
Not like stuff that requires manual labor.
Noted. Have you seen any houses online? Have you already been like looking? I know a lot of people kind of before they even get here kind of are always, everyone's always on Zillow when they're off and just kind of bopping around. Have you seen any properties?
Yeah, I've just been like browsing Zillow every now and then, or like I know one of my friends is a realtor in Columbus, and I've just been like looking at some of the houses she posts just to get an idea of what I might want.
Sure.
So I've seen a few, but I haven't really been looking at Westlake or anything. And I know that right now, I've heard from my friend who just bought a house with you that it is kind of hard to buy a house right now, just with there being so many buyers. So that's why I'm kind of worried and not sure if I should wait.
Sure. Well, what's good is you come to the right place. I'm actually very good at multiple offers. It gets a little crazy, but I have a lot of good tips and tricks that I will definitely help guide and get us the house. Also, too, it is competitive out there, but that's why we want to get pre-approved and really get going of what you want, where you want, and then really the other important thing too is you're renting right now, where how much longer of a lease do you have? And are you month to month? Are you in a lease, like a complete lease? Like, what does that look like timeline wise?
Right now I'm month to month, so pretty much as soon as I want to pick up and go, once I find a house, I would be able to.
Yeah.
I'm kind of worried right now about buying a house because I know that the market is always changing and I'm not an economist or anything, but I'm worried about if I buy a house I pay more for a house than what I would be able to sell it for in the future. And I know no one knows that, but that's kind of, I'm apprehensive about.
I totally understand that. That's a really good question. Right now we've been seeing houses appraised. So, even if we're going over what they're listed for, a lot of people are listing things at a certain price point to get to really their appraised value. I don't have a crystal ball, but based on the appreciation I've seen in the couple of years I've been doing this, I think, there's a strong chance it should be going up, but we can also talk more about that when we meet. So, I can send you, I don't want to hold you up all afternoon, but when would be a good time to maybe meet in person? Are you interested in learning more from my lenders that I work with?
Yeah, if you could send me their information, I should be free next week to kind of talk a little bit more. Is there anything that you would want me to come prepared with, look more at some houses?
I think for now, if you've seen what I tell a bunch of my clients to do, especially when I first talk to them, while you're waiting, while you're talking to the lender, if you've seen any houses, regardless, whatever the budget may be, if you've seen something, the more that you can send me, the better, so I can get into your head. But I think I already know what you're looking for. So, the more info you can share, the better. But really, do that. And then if you have any other questions, feel free to text me. But really, I think next step is, getting on the phone with our go-to lender here, Sean Hadley. He's super nice, and kind of figuring what our budget is, and we can go start, depending on that and how you're feeling, maybe we can start going out and looking at some stuff and get our feet wet. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, I just like to be friendly, ask questions. Carrie's an economist now, so that's fine. But that question's really tough, so I really try to rely on, I don't have a magic ball. I don't know what's their crystal ball, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I truly believe that I just go by what I believe. So I always just make sure, I'm don't quote me on it, but at just the rate that things are going,
Sally Fry asks, would you put me on an MLS search right away?
Yes, so I would say once we get a pre-approval number, that's when I usually start the MLS drip. If someone isn't pre-approved or they haven't figured out, unless they've shown me that they're cash. I like getting drip set up ASAP. And I forgot to mention that, sorry, I'm nervous. But usually I mention that, but it's usually let's get pre-approved, let's know what our budget is, because again, I don't want to dangle a carrot like some other agent. There are other agents who are cool, get in the car, let's go. Oh, you can't buy this, so sorry. I think that's rude. I really, truly think that's so rude to show someone a house that's completely out of their budget. So I would rather start fresh from the beginning, being look, this is our budget. Maybe I'll extend it up a couple thousand just because I know there's wiggle room. So if we're looking at 200,000, I usually people set up on drips for 210, just because again, when you crunch down, depending on what they can do, I like to also explain once we kind of get to this point, it's okay, every $1,000 is worth about coffee. So about $425 or so. That's going to be the difference. So if we find our dream house at 200 and we need to go up to, 205 or something like that, then we at least know. Or I would rather them just know in general, being just know about this, because you never know, we can make it work or not like that. But I know if someone's at 200, I'm never going to put them on a drip for 280. So yeah, drip ASAP, but really again, with more info versus than just a couple bedrooms and bathrooms and a fenced in yard.
Brian says, that was awesome, you got a lot of information.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad. That's the point. Anything else? Any other questions in here? Have I been helpful?
Yes.
Okay. sometimes I feel like I can work on it. So I always just like to ask. But seriously, if you have any more questions, if you think about anything, just reach out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So for your A, B, and C buyers, I know that, you can't make anyone do anything and they have to come to terms on their own. But is there anything that you do, whether it's subtly to kind of, not push them, but move them to the next step, or you just kind of let them discover it on their own and let them know you're always there?
Well, I like always there for them, But no, what I like to do, I really try to, once they tell me, oh, my lease is up in August 1st is when my lease is up. I need to be moving then. I kind of, if they're kind of on the fence of like, do I rent? Do I do this? I'm like, look, we have the right amount of time. I only need 30, depending on my lender, I need about like 30 days on average to get to get us into a house and be done. But, it's really to think about where do you want to be? Do you want to rent? And then really kind of poking them, being like, look how great this house is. Like, this fits all of your options. Like, let's go. Because I do try to, like, the B buyers, I still want to get out and still going on showings. It might not be, 4 times a week like I have with some other, other buyers, but I at least want to be seeing them pretty often just to be like, okay, like, let's get you to an A. There just maybe isn't a property yet, or to continue if we go look at a few things to be like, okay, you like this, you don't like this. Now I know I won't send you that kind of property. And then as stuff comes up, then it's kind of like, look, here is literally the house that we missed because we weren't ready to buy a couple months ago. It's here, similar house, like, let's go see it. So just staying in conversation with those B buyers. Sometimes I do try to treat them a little bit like A- buyers. So, keeping them top of mind and not really letting them go because you just, again, nurture. The C buyers, usually they're the ones who are calling and asking questions and then disappearing on me. I can be chatting with them all I want. They'll just disappear. And they're not real, so that's good. So I know not to talk to them or really try to be like, let's go.
All right, well, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can throw it in the chat. Thank you, Morgan. This is very helpful, very informational for everyone. For those of you in the Zoom room, we're going to head into our breakout rooms now to do script practice. I believe we've been working on it. I'm laughing because everyone's leaving the Zoom.
Yeah, I see that.
We're going to do some script practice now with each other. If you want to specifically script practice based on what we were talking about today, if you want to act like some buyers, that'd probably be helpful, but we're going to break out now. Thank you again, Morgan.
Thank you.